Sokpop is a collective of 4 game designers from the Netherlands. They've created over 100 games together, typically releasing one every month or so. These games are usually small, inventive, and full of charm. By all means, go and browse their extensive catalogue, or subscribe to their Patreon to get new projects as they release. But today, I'd like to bring your attention to one marvelous little creation of theirs. In October 2020, they released a strategy masterpiece, one which now maintains an average of 0 active players. And that's a real shame, because Kingpins is plainly incredible. When you first launch it, you really have 2 options, campaign or versus. Whilst versus is what turns it from a good game to a great one, the campaign serves excellently to teach you its mechanics. The king has requested a banquet. To fulfill your monarch's wish, you must construct a house, to train a worker, to pick some berries. Houses cost wood, and workers food. Spend those and we can get started. Unlike in a traditional RTS, Kingpins gives you a little cursor to move around the game's grid. It can select a space to build in, or select one unit at a time. And whilst that would seem annoying, with the limited pieces in play, you'll hardly notice. More houses require more wood though, so you'll need to produce another unit and tell them to gather some lumber. Use it to build more housing, to increase your population further, and to start maximizing your food output. If you pluck your bushes bare, then chase down some wild pigs until you have 20 food. It's gotta be a grand feast. This level will start you with stacks of wood, but you'll need to collect some gold for your military. Workers drop off gathered resources at houses, so position them close to resource tiles for maximum efficiency. In Kingpins, it's lose your king, lose the game, so you better train some soldiers and rangers to keep his excellency safe. Constructing one home gives you room for one worker, or one military unit, so building up your army may strain your economy, or vice versa. Whilst workers can fight, soldiers can't gather any materials. Housing isn't cheap too, and only gets more expensive. In an average game, you might only get to 7 or 8 population, so you better make it count. Luckily, you're still on the first real level, so you'll fend off its couple of attackers easily. Where did those ruffians come from though? The neighbouring king! Now you've got access to all the buildings and must fight an opponent that has the same. Principal among these for your success is the tower. Just like the one you start with, additional towers will rain arrows on enemy troops, and will expand your borders. You can only build in territory of your colour, so if you want access to more resources, you better start painting the map blue. You'll need a small army to take out the enemy king, so you may also want to build some farms to feed them. Berries, like all natural resources, eventually run out, but farms will keep producing crops for the whole game. Once you have enough food, gold, and housing, build a couple soldiers and send them in swinging. Oh no, there's some goblins following that other king. They're a faction with completely different and rather destructive units, and you've only got 2 minutes to prepare before meeting them. That's just enough time to build a mage tower and train a mage if you're really careful with your worker placement. You can train 5 guys to gather as many resources as possible, then send some to die just as the goblins arrive. It's a bit dark, but as you can never delete a unit yourself, you've got to be tactical with who you house and who you sacrifice. Your king has ordered an invasion of those goblins. You just need to gather some supplies. The most important resource in the beginning is wood. You need it to build your houses, and each house requires progressively more of it. So assigning your first handful of workers to wood production is good for maximizing your kingdom's economic potential. Goblins will be invading our operation periodically though, so build a tower for defense and make sure you have some soldiers on standby. After a while though, you may start to see the hulking form of an ogre arrive at your doors. These will take a bit more to bring down. Invasion materials secured, you arrive to find 2 goblin tribes. Maybe they will turn on each other, but either way, build a knight academy to ensure your safety. It lets you do 3 things: train knights, obviously, squires too, and research an upgrade to turn your knights into royal guards. That costs 20 gold though, so get mining. You'll notice that the goblins have an entirely different set of buildings too. Some equivalent, like their huts, to your houses, and some unique, like their ogre cages and goblin outposts. Once you've got that upgrade, you'll want to build a knight and a squire. The squire is a quarter the cost and pretty weak, but promotes into a knight when one dies. Allows for much more cost-effective goblin stomping. Your liege has demanded another feast, so you've got to collect 25 food in 3 minutes. This level is just a straightforward test of your worker management abilities. One of the most important skills in the game is knowing if labor is best spent securing the means for more labor, or if you ought to be reassigning your workers. The next level is called Ominous Premonition, and that's a pretty apt name. Another test of your defensive abilities. You've got 1 minute and a load of resources to prepare before undead abominations bear down on your glorious king. These mysterious skeletal warriors are more than brittle piles of bones though, so you better watch out. Would you look at that? The trail of ribs you've been following has inadvertently led you through elf territory. I'm sure you can guess, but elves favor the bow over the blade, so you may need to respond in kind. Rangers can be trained straight from houses, so fight fire with fire, and may your arrows be even sharper than their ears. The cowardly elven king has fortified himself behind a great wall. He'll be no match for human engineers though. Build a workshop and you'll find a very useful upgrade. 5 stone and 5 gold lets you research better tools. You'll soon be seeing a boost in productivity from all your workers. The workshop also lets you build catapults. These have pretty weak defense, but a load of range, and will take out most buildings without issue. These too have a couple upgrades you can get, so by all means learn how to ignite their projectiles. The elves won't stand a chance. You're finally back on the undead's trail, and you find yourself surrounded by eggs? Best you smash as many as you can as quickly as possible. You likely won't like what they tend to contain. And finally, our long quest ends with us discovering the evil source, the Lich King and his realm of darkness. We start on the outskirts of their land, behind an inconvenient thicket, and whilst we could expand around, we can also clear our own way. Chop tree trunks until there's nothing left for your axes to strike, then order a worker to remove the stumps. These won't give you any materials, but will provide you another tile to build on. Clear enough woodland, and you'll have a straight shot at the enemy. Now that you've conquered the campaign, you're ready to toss your golden hat in the versus ring. You have the option to play against your friends, AI, or both, with up to 4 kingdoms fighting for control over the square. But this isn't an online game, so how does that work? Good old-fashioned gamepads and local multiplayer. A controller is the optimal way to interact with Kingpins. The genius of its design being that it's a full RTS, controllable with only 4 buttons and an analog stick. Now gather some friends and plug in. Kingpins would be fun even if it were just kingdoms of man duking it out, but it's more than that. You can play as any of the factions you beat in the campaign, and all are asymmetrical. Let's start by looking at the Goblins. Stout and rowdy creatures, strictly carnivorous too. No farms are to be found in Goblin territory. You'll only see their workers turning pigs into bacon or chickens into tenders. Whilst the former roams free, humans sometimes harvesting their pink flesh too, the latter are reared by the green and greedy. They must construct chicken coops to slowly spawn a flock. Goblin huts are slightly cheaper than their human counterparts, but their residents are more expensive. Standard workers, though admittedly hardy, cost 7 food to produce. You also have the option to create ranged hunters, weak against enemies, but with a bow that does extra damage to 4-legged or feathered fauna. Your towers are relatively inexpensive and give you a lot of sight, but do less damage than those of other factions. Useful for staking out territory, not so much for defending it. The Goblin Lab is an essential build for any aspiring horde. A bit of food and a bit of gold lets you increase the health of all your units. Or research blood distillation, giving you 1 stone for every food you collect. Play it right and you'll never need quarry again. But where does the Goblin military get its firepower? The Goblin factory, of course. Strap a propeller to a new recruit and send them flying over the enemy. Your drones can be very effective against an opponent without the ranged units required to shoot them down. Research in the lab can make them fly faster, and soon you'll have an air force able to scramble in seconds. Whilst you're at it, buy the upgrade that increases your workers' strength. You have no traditional soldier units, but a populous militia can work just as well as a couple trained warriors. The other unit the factory can pump out is the Demolitionist. They'll carry a bomb as big as themselves to the enemy's front line and blast a hole in it. What happens to them, you might ask? Well, the last building available to you is the Cage. 1 cage lets you spawn 1 hobgoblin. Incredibly expensive, but incredibly strong. Research armor for them at the lab, and they'll be crushing whole enemy encampments with a couple swings of their club. Goblins have centered their entire society around destruction. They have no shortage of ways to flatten their enemy's kingdom, though they do lack in means to secure their own. If you think the best defense is a good offense, then these little green guys are for you. In many ways the opposite to the goblins, elves are strictly vegetarian and would sooner erect walls than destroy them. Nature lovers as they are, housing for their race can only be built on forest tiles, so you've got to strike a good balance between constructing tree houses and clearing land for the timber they require. Once your elf village has established itself in the canopy, you should probably build a farm or 2. Remember, you can't rely on pigs for sustenance, so get planting. You can build a sprinkler though, to irrigate adjacent soil, making more food for your loyal subjects. And speaking of, if you're in want of new workers, then you're in need of gold. The elves have the only basic unit requiring that shiny rock, so if you find yourself surrounded by the prominently cheekboned kind, try cutting off their ore supply. If you want to stop that from happening, you'll have access to some decent towers, but also, and uniquely, life trees. These give an extra 20% health to all your elves. They're fairly inexpensive, and they're stackable, so they're a must. Your warriors will come from one of 2 places. The first, a treetop alternative to housing, is the Hideout. It gives you access to the Forest Walker and the Shaman. The former is a ranged unit with a notable ability to walk straight through trees, very useful for safely dispatching enemies not native to the woodland. And the Shamans? They heal their nearby allies when dealing damage. The other building that trains your military is the Hall of Prestige, the origin point for all your elite elves. Alongside the bonus health they'll receive from the life trees, the hall also lets you research upgrades to their movement speed, their defense, and their attack rate. Then, on top of all that, they get stronger with every kill. The training dummies you can build count too, so have them hone their skills on the inanimate so they can make your enemies inanimate too. For your siege weapons, build the Atelier. It lets you construct an iron stag, then upgrade your new ram's speed, as well as all your buildings' HP. Opponent fortifications will be falling quicker and yours lasting longer. It also lets you improve all elves' speed and your farm workers' tools, making resource gathering much more efficient. This faction relies on research pretty heavily, so make sure you're aware of all your options. Last, but certainly not least among your building options, is the wall. For only 1 stone, you can construct a sturdy barrier that keeps back the enemy hordes whilst letting your citizens pass. For that price, it's not difficult to surround your entire kingdom, and to make enemy warriors, or those goblin bombers, far less effective and far less annoying. If elves can complete all their research, then they become rather powerful. If they can get a couple elite elves, then there's little you can do to fight back. They just have to hold out long enough and gather sufficient resources to do so. Act fast, or risk finding yourself downrange of their arrows. Last, but certainly not least, is the Lich. The first thing you'll notice upon reanimating is that you don't have a food count in your resources corner. You have a little swirl of turquoise instead. That's soul, your most powerful asset. The first few minutes of your gameplay as the undead will be rather straightforward though, their population providing buildings being the only ones unable to produce anything but a basic worker. But once said workers have been produced, and you have a little stone and gold to your name, a soul fountain you can build. As long as they're standing, you'll slowly be producing that sweet, sweet soul. Like houses, they get more expensive with each placed down though. But what does soul actually do? Well, for one, you need it to train units. If you accidentally use all of it before building a fountain, you'll get one for each kill you make. So run down an enemy worker or wild pig and harvest their essence. The resource is needed to construct turrets too, as well as your unique and fittingly named soul towers. Those give you 2 powerful abilities. 4 soul lets you fully heal any nearby units, and 6 lets you bring unholy lightning down on any surrounding aggressors. The Skull Den, for 15 wood, will produce the bulk of your military. Skeleton warriors are strong against magic and arrows. With more calcium than anyone, they're great in a scrap, and darn tough to defend against. Bone throwers, as their name implies, will throw their bones hard at the enemy, even if each throw deals 1 damage to themselves. Your ranged units, they'll loyally support your warriors from behind, and only get better at doing so once you research their splash damage ability. Even the undead can die, so you might want to get another upgrade from one of your fountains. When a unit of yours gives up their ghost, it returns in the form of 1 soul straight to your stash. With the Soul Keeper unlocked though, you'll be rewarded with 1 extra for each brave skeleton soldier that dies his second death in your great army. More importantly though, a fountain also lets you turn 10 soul into 10 of any other resource. Don't have enough wood for a house? Enough stone for a tower? Enough gold for an upgrade? Simply transmute anything you need into existence, so long as you've had your fountains running long enough to produce 10 soul in the first place. This single ability is the Lich's most powerful. With enough soul production, everything else becomes irrelevant. You are the only faction with an unlimited supply of all resources, as long as you can protect all your fountains. The last and most expensive of your units, simultaneously the simplest and the most interesting, is the Nightmare, a ghostly being that cannot do any damage. That is, until it reaches an enemy, attacks them, and turns into a copy of the opposing unit. There are many interesting ways to use it, though some might be less useful than others. The Lich has one more building, if you can call it that. Eggs are unique. They take a while to hatch, but will release chaos upon the square when they do. From their chitin carapace spawn forth crawlers. They take up no population, but allow you no control. They will target whatever opponent is closest, sprint towards them, and wreak a trail of destruction. They are very annoying to deal with. If you fancy yourself setting up a little death industrial complex, by all means pick Lich and get to farming that soul. Like variety in your units, no faction has more ways to kill than that of Death himself. They will rue the day they tried to play chess with you. Kingpins is a load of fun. It is an RTS distilled to its most basic and most entertaining parts. What it is not, however, is entirely balanced or perfectly bug-free. It is a game made by a small team in a short time, and with that caveat, is something to behold. The time my friends and I have spent figuring out what makes it tick and how to best exploit its rules has been an utter blast. Because I bring my laptop and controllers to a good portion of hangouts, I've had a lot of people give the game a go. Most find their footing after a couple rounds and get to having fun pretty quick. But when it comes down to it, when all bets are off and all niceties are foregone, the only player who can stand toe-to-toe with me is my friend Tom. Now, despite us both agreeing that they're almost objectively the worst, he'll pick Goblins every single time, and will watch as my army torches his huts with a marvelous grace. We are, by virtue of probably being the game's only dedicated players, almost definitely the two best out there. Much to the chagrin of our slightly less obsessed friends, we will often get 4 people in a match and play until it's a one-on-one duel to the death.
Okay, we're actually speeding through this game. Fuck me. My wood seems to be good. I'm gonna start getting gold. That's where things are gonna go crazy.
Most often, I'll play Lich, because it's a bit stronger of a faction than the others. Tom will play Goblins. Why? Because he likes goblins.
I've got food for days. A few days. A few good days. Couple days.
One interesting quirk of the game is that all players' cursors are always visible, so I'll constantly have to be on guard lest his comes too close to my king.
I forget that we can see what we're making. What we each other are making. I can see you're building something, and you can see I'm trying to work on something.
We've optimized our starts to a T, and know all the favorite tricks of each other.
Nothing's happening. Nothing's happening. Nah, you don't need to do that. It's straight zapping me. Straight zapping me. Okay.
Regardless of their many great abilities, the Lich's power to zap rogue goblins for a measly 6 soul is perhaps their most broken.
Crazy with the fake out? I see you with your little ghost. You ain't safe from me. That, intercepting the ghost. Run away, ogre. Run away, ogre. Run away, ogre. Fake out. Shit!
Tom is the exact opposite of a sore loser. That's why he's so fun to play with. He will stare death incarnate in the face and will not surrender until he has exploded every last bomb of his.
How do I attack you? How does this happen? Shit! Get out of the tower's range. Oh. What do I do?
Part of the game's charm is just how many dumb moves you are forced to make.
This is so stupid, I'm sorry.
Tom sends an ogre, I copy it with my nightmare. Tom's forced to use his demolitionist to blow them both up. I think it says something about the kind of person he is, that he'll stick with goblins on principle, despite the disadvantage that might put him at.
Oh, just sit here and kill that thing, please. 1 damage at a time, let's go. My drones do 1 damage, what is the point of even having them?
He keeps playing, long after a lesser king would have abdicated.
Realistically, it's not over till it's over. Okay, now, guys on guy duty. You ready for this? I was joking. Okay, I'm not doing terribly after that attack.
He'll keep having fun even when his odds are 100 to 1.
Line of towers. It's like the Great Wall of Berlin. The big wall. I got slacker goblins all over the damn place. Okay, I'm sending my king into retirement. Okay, my king's to be a pig farmer.
I wrote this script to share the passion I have for Kingpins with the world. and I only have that passion because of the time I spent playing it with him. I'd like to officially dedicate this here video to Tom, a great friend, and the best damn Goblin player I've ever known. Please, go and pick up the game, support Sogpop, and think of Tom whenever you use a bomb-carrying Goblin to blast your enemy to smithereens.